Good morning. When I was young, my mom and my dad used to run my mom around the house blowing kisses and grabbing her and just holding on to her. Every time he caught up with her and he held her, she would always yell, "Stop, stop," like she truly meant it. Okay? There was times when they would go walking. My dad and my mom would be holding hands as they were on their first date. There were times when they were sitting around watching television, they would be snugged up to one another. And to us, it was just something special that we saw. I asked my mom later on, how come they act so crazy? And my mom, she told me she made a choice. She made a choice if she wanted to keep a home, if she wanted to keep a husband, she made a choice to make sure that she took care of home. She said if she didn't take care of home, somebody else would take care of home for her. Okay. If I choose to take my relationship for granted, then I made the choice of destroying my relationship. So I choose to love. I've been married for 20 years. In 30 years, I've been doing research on how to keep a relationship. Today, I want to talk to you and try to persuade you on how to make choices, how to choose to love. One thing I want to talk about, I want you to look at yourselves. I want you to be able to know that you are the most important person. You have to love you before you can even get into any kind of relationship. My source is Ronald Catherick. He talks about emotional safety. He says when an individual or two individuals decide to look at their own self-esteem and they begin to work on it individually, they can come out into a relationship and it can be something that's going to be sensational. A while back, my cousin, when I was young, she turned around and she told me, she said, "Mike, you're not going to have a girlfriend and you're not going to succeed because you're black and you're ugly." She said your two younger brothers are going to have girlfriends and they're going to succeed. Now with that should have tore down my self-esteem because I heard it from a female, my cousin. And at the same time, I was just at that age to where I would start looking at girls. So what I decided to do, I decided to learn about females. I hung around females. I began to talk to them. I began to want to know what's important to them. They felt comfortable with me and not considered me as a threat. So what they ended up doing was they began to open up to me. Not to the guys. They felt threatened because they looked at me as he's not weird, he's not funny, but yet still he has females coming around. I decided to change my self-esteem. And the same author turned around and they said when an individual changes to a positive self-esteem, what they do is something that they're not born with, but they take on for themselves as a result of self-evaluation. Their self-esteem grows. They are able to face the challenges and they're able to manage the difficult situations, which is more important to them. So now taking that situation and being able now to open up and be able to talk to females being able to be comfortable with me, it took me right into dating. I was able to look at a situation for what it was. But at the same time, one thing that I did not need to bring in this relationship was not being considerate of my partner. And that's one thing that I want to tell you. If you're inconsiderate of your partner, you tear down the relationship. You as an individual takes that relationship and take that individual and just, you lose all trust. Mary Ridge Leonard from the International Encyclopedia of Marriage and Family stated that in a date, when you're dating, you turn around and they took a statistics of how a relationship could come out being successful. And these are some of the things that they found out. An individual becomes open as far as communication. They develop a friendship. They develop something that's lasting to where both individuals, they grow from it. One thing that I looked at in the relationship, I looked at the fact of giving myself. When I'm in that room with that individual, I choose to make that individual the only person in the room. I don't care who comes in the room. I want that undivided attention. Because in a negative sense, if I devalue that individual, if I don't take that individual as important to me, the same things, the same characteristics that you saw that was positive, it now works from the same author, it works in a negative aspect. So what I choose to do, I choose to take that relationship serious. I choose to make that person number one. Which moves me to marriage. If I take what I was taught in coming up, in the books that I've read, and the experiences that I've had in a relationship, I take that over into a marriage. The only thing that I need to add the spices. The things that you get a person is what you need to do to keep that person. But if I take my relationship for granted, not only do I tear down the relationship, not only do my wife turns me off or find different ways to argue with me or just don't want to hear from me, but I chose to do certain things to make her act that way. So what I choose to do, I choose to work with it. There are some things that you have to do to keep a relationship going. And you have Pamela Johnson that talks about keeping a relationship going. You have to have a checkoff list. Say good morning. Get up there and make that person feel like they're the most important thing, or most important person that's there. Tell her you love her, tell him you love him when you don't even feel like it. But you have to make that relationship work. Go out on little dates. Put little notes around where the person can find it. Or write a letter to the individual and tell them how wonderful your week was. That's going to light the flame. That's going to keep that individual in your life. That's going to keep the relationship working. At the same time, you want to turn around and you want to go back to dating. There's a book that's out there, it's called 500 Great Dates. And it talks about the wonderful things that you can get out there and you can do to add the spices to your relationship. And by adding the spices to your relationship, you remember why you were in love. You remember how important that person is. You make the choices. I make the choices of wanting to keep a relationship, wanting to keep a marriage. And in my conclusion, by following these steps, will you have a perfect relationship or a perfect marriage? The answer is no. But you can make choices in order to keep that relationship. By knowing yourself, you choose to prevent the relationship from becoming a disaster. In dating, you choose to give the best gift one could ever give to win the other person's heart. In a marriage, you choose to keep the fire of romance burning for yourself, but not for yourself, but for the other person that you're in love with. My aunt and uncle were married for 42 years. They gave to one another. They loved one another. And one day, my aunt, she passed away. My cousin, she came home. My uncle, as usual, sitting out on the porch, he was asleep. She went to wake him up to tell him to come on in the house. He was dead. The doctor turned around when he did the examination for no apparent reason. Was there anything wrong with him? So unofficially, they said he died of a broken heart. He gave everything that he could give while his spouse was alive. But the greatest gift that he chose to give after she left was to give up life. he chooses to love. Thank you very much.